If you have a true scary story you'd like to hear featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. Hi, Marie. I was listening to some of your videos, and there was a story that reminded me of something similar that happened to me while I was in college. So I thought I would share it with you. Unlike all the crazy stories I've heard about college students going on trips for spring break, I was far too broke to do any of that. But thankfully, I wasn't alone. I lived in a small town, going to a local college, and living in one of their dorms. My two roommates and I didn't have a lot of free time or money to plan something crazy, so we just went to parties our friends hosted or friends of friends. That way, we could still have a good time, and it was cheap to free. I remember one party, though, that I will never forget. It was nearing the end of spring break, actually, and we learned of a local party that was open to anyone. They just asked you to BYOB. That was reasonable for me because I wasn't picky and could stomach some pretty cheap beer. So the three of us all got a 12-pack and drove over to the party. We got there and found some of our other friends and just let loose. We drank, we played drinking games, we did stupid pranks to each other. It was a good time. I met a few people that I didn't know, and even some people I just knew in passing at school. At one point, I ended up outside and was watching some people do stupid stunts into the pool. I was standing on the patio next to a guy I didn't know and made a comment about one of the stunts they pulled looking like it hurt. The guy laughed and explained how he should have done this instead and probably would have pulled it off better. I don't remember the exact thing he said, but it was something to do with some kind of aquatic thing. Dude sounded like he was a professional swimmer or something. So I asked him about it, and he said that he was on the swim team. He told me a bit more about the science of swimming, I guess, and some of it was pretty cool. I threw some dumb scenarios his way, and he assured me of how it would work or how much of an utter failure it would be, and we had a good laugh. After some time, he said he had to go and walked off. My last thought was, cool guy, and moved on with my night. After some time, I was talking with some other friends and brought up the swimming guy. None of them seemed to know who I was talking about, so I just kind of dropped it. It wasn't unusual for uninvited people to show up, and as long as they weren't a problem, there was no sense in trying to make them leave. But later on, I ran into the friend I was talking to earlier and spotted the swimming guy passing by the living room. I pointed him out, and my friend didn't recognize him either. He wasn't on the swim team either, so we just assumed we may have been in different years or programs, and that's why we never ran across him. I tried to get his attention, but he looked confused as to why I was flagging him down. He just had an annoyed look on his face and ignored me. My friend laughed, but I just shrugged it off. People are weird, and it wasn't like I knew him on a personal level, so no loss to me. Again, cue more of the same for the night, including some people starting to leave or pass out all over the place. The music was still playing, though, as it had been throughout the whole night, so other than the people dispersing, the party was the same as it had been. So, while some of us were in the kitchen talking about one of our classes, we all jumped when we heard someone yelling. We went and checked the living room where we thought it was coming from, and saw some people staring down the hall towards the bedrooms and bathroom. I walked down the hall and I could hear more yelling and grunting sounds. As I approached the bathroom, I saw the swimming guy standing in there, holding some kind of pipe. One of my friends was standing behind me, but otherwise, nobody was doing anything but staring. So I just asked him if he was all right. That's when he turned to look at me and just started rambling about things that made no sense. He said it was too loud, even though nothing had changed all night. And in fact, since there were less people, it wasn't as loud. I wanted to clarify with him because I didn't understand why it was all of a sudden a problem, but he just kept talking. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was saying things like, "They won't stop laughing. I know they're laughing at me. I know they're talking about me. Stop it. Why won't they stop it?" I just stood there confused and not knowing what to do. This was obviously not about the music. This was something else. So the only thing I said was something like, "Hey man, maybe you should relax a bit." But before I could finish that, he started screaming and swung the pipe in my direction. He was still in the bathroom with me outside, and with him being intoxicated or on something, he instead hit the door. I was not going to stick around at this point and risk getting hit, so I rushed back into the living room and told them we needed to leave before things got worse. As people started shoving themselves towards the farthest wall or running out the back door, the swimming guy went running out of the bathroom screaming, no more, please," and out the front door. I watched him from the front door as he ran into the road and was struck by a car. A bunch of people were still inside and saw this, causing them all to scream. I ran to call 911 from the landline I had seen, and it was just pure chaos. I barely knew the address, so I had to go check that. I didn't even know the guy's name and was trying to explain what had happened while people were screaming in the background and me not being in my right mind either. I kept walking back to the front door and saw that the person in the car did stop. There were a few people from the party out there, but I had no idea of the condition of the guy. An ambulance finally showed up, so I got off the phone and ran outside with them. They already had him on the stretcher and was putting him in the ambulance. I didn't see him move once. I didn't hear anything from him and feared this man I just met was now dead. I was horrified, not knowing what else to do. I went back in the house and watched as many people left crying, shoulders and head low, saying absolutely nothing. The next day, I tried contacting people that were at the party, trying to figure out the name of that guy, but nobody knew him. There were so many people that I knew from the party that I found it difficult to believe that no one else knew this supposed student. He gave details about the school and some of the teachers, so I found it hard to believe he could have been lying. I even tried going to the hospital and describing him and when he got there, but all they could tell me was that he wasn't there anymore, but couldn't provide any more information. I guess it made sense. I went in looking for someone that I couldn't even give the name of, but at least by the way they were talking about him, it reassured me that he hadn't died. It may be a bit anticlimactic, but that's where my story ends. I never did learn who that person was, and those that I still have contact with still cannot recall his name or even remember him at this point. Since then, the memories of that party stayed in the back of my mind. I took a small break on partying, but when I got back into that scene, I feared experiencing something similar to that. Thankfully, I never did. You just never know what someone else is going through. So, no matter where you are, it doesn't hurt to learn names and all possible escape routes. Anyways, thanks for letting me share my story. This happened to me back when I was in middle school, about 15 years ago. Spring break was never anything special to my family, other than just a week off of school. There were 4 of us kids, and now having 2 of my own, I understand why we didn't really go anywhere. Kids are expensive. But it didn't really bother us. We all entertained ourselves and each other quite well. However, I did have a friend whose family was pretty well off. His dad had some very official job. I was a kid at the time, so I don't know what it was exactly, but I remember him working long hours. He always wore suits and never really talked about work around us. However, they always took some pretty awesome vacations. I've seen pictures and souvenirs from when they went to different countries. So, for this story, I will call my friend Levi in case his dad does have some job that I shouldn't really be talking about. Levi has always been pretty cool. We always got along really well and hung out a lot. In fact, I've even been invited to go with them to their lake house, which was a lot of fun. So, for spring break, I was invited again to join them at the lake. With my parents' permission, I did not waste time packing a bag to go. However, there was one little wrinkle in our whole plan, or at least the plan in my head. His cousin Skylar was going to be joining us. Now, Levi was an only child, but Skylar hung around so much that you might have thought she was their kid too. She was a year older than me and Levi, but she always wanted to hang out with us. At first, I didn't have a problem with this because she seemed pretty cool and, yeah, pretty cute too. She would play the dumb games we played, watch TV with us, whatever. But I started noticing pretty quickly that she was a little weird. For example, we were outside trying to start their fire pit when we picked up an old log that was on the ground. Underneath it were tons of pill bugs and other bugs, I'm sure. Being the type of kids we were, we started picking them up and throwing them at each other. I know it was dumb and mean, but that's just who we were. Skylar was there too, and she was even joining in on it. But then she just stopped and out of nowhere started humming. We noticed her doing this, so we stopped to see what was happening when she then crushed them in her hand and rubbed it on her face. Then she started laughing and chasing us like she was going to wipe it on us. So maybe not creepy, but definitely really weird, and especially being a girl. I was used to girls our age wanting to look pretty and nice, so it wasn't something I expected at all. And by the look on Levi's face, he didn't expect it either. So, other than that memory, she's done some other weird things, such as when her mood would shift in a blink of an eye. We would just be watching a movie and laughing, and she would just stand up and storm off angrily. I've seen his mom try to talk to her, and she would just be screaming and pacing back and forth or rocking. Now, before you say anything, I know a lot more now as an adult, but I didn't understand any of this as a kid. I just tried my best to steer clear from her and just dealt with it as I really enjoyed hanging out with Levi. So, anyways, back to our spring break. It was going to be me, Levi, Skylar, and Levi's parents. We got to the lake house, started making sleeping arrangements, and planning on what we wanted to do. We took their paddle boat out on the lake and went fishing. We made a fire out there too, and even had a day out on their boat. It had actually been a lot of fun, and even Skylar was manageable with minimal breakdowns. At some point during the trip, his dad had to leave and wouldn't be back that following night. So it was just going to be his mom with us. She decided she would get dinner for us instead of making it that night, so she left to pick it up, which was probably about 20 to 30 minutes away from the lake. Skylar was out on the back deck reading a book, and we were still inside at the time playing a video game. We had brought our DSs with us. His mom told us she was leaving and that we could stay in or go out, but we couldn't leave the property, which was fine by us. We decided to go out back and fish from the dock, as we didn't want to lug out the paddle boat again. When we got out there, Levi realized we had forgotten something, so he went back inside to look for it, and I decided to sit on one of the chairs next to Skylar and try to be nice to her. I asked her if she wanted to go fishing with us, and she said no. I asked her what she was reading, and she told me the name. I can't remember it now, but I hadn't heard of it before, so I asked her what it was about. She explained how it was about a woman whose husband was physically abusive towards her and tried to kill her. However, she lived and was taking revenge and going about some long, drawn-out plan to kill him. I remember saying something about it being intense, and she agreed, and then we sat there in silence. Then she said, "Could you imagine that?" I asked her what she meant, and she said in almost a dreamy manner, "Someone you once loved trying to kill you? Oh, or killing them?" I just kind of laughed and said, "That's pretty freaky though." I guess that was the wrong thing to say, because she slammed the book closed and gave me such an angry glare. She then stood up and said, "I guess you wouldn't understand," and stormed off inside. It was a weird situation, but I just went and set up my pole. Shortly after, Levi came back out and we started fishing, and I told him about what happened. He just laughed and mentioned it's best to just ignore most of the stuff she said, so I shrugged it off and we continued fishing. After some time, I had to use the restroom, so I walked off to go back inside. When I went in, I found Skylar standing next to the room she was staying in with her hands behind her back. I wasn't expecting her to be there since the hall light wasn't even on, but I just made a comment about her scaring me. She didn't budge. She just kept staring at me. I asked her if she was okay, and again, she didn't respond. So I decided to continue with what I was trying to do, which meant I had to walk by her. As soon as I did, she lunged out at me, and I felt a sharp pain in my back, causing me to scream out. When I turned around, I saw Skylar holding a huge knife with this crazed look in her eye. I was still a kid, so I didn't know what to do other than run to my destination since it had a lock on the door. She swung the knife at me again and managed to cut me across my shoulder, before I got the door closed. I locked it and then ran to the window as it faced out to the backyard and yelled for Levi. While I'm yelling at him to get his crazy cousin, I hear her yelling at me, "Let me love you. You can love me too." I saw Levi run towards the house and then could hear them yelling at each other. She was telling Levi that she loved me and just wanted us to die together. He kept calling her crazy and telling her to put the knife down, but the only thing I heard was her crying and then a door slam closed. Levi then came into the bathroom with me, locking the door, and helped me cover my back. Then he went back out, leaving me in the bathroom to call his mom. That felt like eternity as I sat in the bathroom, having Levi going back and forth between me and Skylar. When his mom finally did return, I could hear her pleading to Skylar to open the door, and after Skylar screamed and cried, they both seemed to calm down. She then came to check on me and took me to the hospital due to the slash on my back apparently being pretty deep. I did have to get quite a few stitches on my back and some on my arm, but then I went back to the cabin and called my parents to let them know what happened. Levi's mom did most of the talking, and to my surprise, they let me stay for the rest of the trip. I was expecting them to make me go home. The rest of the trip went all right. Skylar was never left alone with us again, but I was too afraid to even be in the same room as her, so that kind of did ruin some of the fun for me. Overall, I still hung out with Levi after this, but it did leave a permanent scar, both physically and mentally. I asked Levi why she was always around at one point, because she had many more physical breakdowns, but nothing towards me, and I didn't understand. All he could really tell me at the time was that she was pretty much living with him now. My parents apparently even knew more than me, as they told me that she needed parents that loved and cared for her, so sometimes we just have to show people patience and time. It wasn't until I was older that I learned more. Skylar's parents weren't really in the picture, and after a pretty bad event in their family, Levi's parents won custody of her. Her childhood obviously wasn't a normal one either, leaving her with her own trauma that she had to work through. I don't know if what I experienced with her was something she experienced or was just how her brain worked, but I definitely don't blame her now. But let me tell you, being chased and stabbed with a knife when you're 15 was one of the most terrifying things I have ever experienced. A few years ago, my girlfriend, me, and 4 of our friends rented a cabin for a few days during spring break. We just wanted a place where we could all chill and do whatever. The only determined plan we did make was for us all to go rock climbing together. The cabin was bigger than expected too. It had 3 bedrooms, one with a master bath, and then another separate bathroom, which was great. The living room was spacious enough for all of us to watch a movie in, and the kitchen was big enough for one of my friends to cook a full-course meal. He was going to a culinary school at the time, so he was always willing to cook for someone, and we were always willing to be the guinea pigs. The kitchen had a door to the back covered porch, which then led out to an open field with a big fire pit and trees that lined the back of it. It was perfect, especially for the price. If it wasn't obvious, there were 3 couples, and we all drove separate cars and met there. We all chipped in and split the cost for our food and drinks and entertainment, and legitimately all worked out really well. I think the worst part we had experienced was Mike and Jess missing a turn and having to guide them backwards. Well, that was until the second night. The night had a slight chill to it, but nothing that a bonfire couldn't fix. So we went to start a fire and realized none of us brought lighter fluid. So we started looking around the cabin for a lighter or matches, anything. We finally found a lighter that barely worked in the bathroom and was able to get our fire started. We all grabbed some drinks and sat by the fire, just talking and screwing off, when I noticed Leslie staring off. I nudged my girlfriend Madison to look at her, and she called her out. That's when Leslie pointed out a figure standing by the trees. Isaiah, being the guy that's not afraid of anything, called him out, asking if he wanted to join or if he had at least a lighter. After we all sat there snickering, we watched as he slowly turned and walked towards the driveway and down the hill until we couldn't see him anymore. This place was like a campground, but with cabins. So we weren't really in the middle of nowhere. So at first, we just assumed it was someone at a neighboring cabin watching us, possibly mad about us being outside, possibly being loud. That was actually a tame night, but some people are pretty whiny like that. So we decided to just take it back inside since the fire was weak anyways. The rest of the night was us playing a game inside, and it went just fine. The next day was our rock climbing and hiking day. We all piled into Jess's Jeep and headed to the place. The event went great, and we all were having a lot of fun. We ended up coming across a lake at the bottom of a small cliff, and being the dumb young people we were, we all made bets and dared Isaiah to jump into the lake from the top of the overhang. Like I said, it wasn't that high up, and swimming was permitted in that lake, so it wasn't that big of a deal. It was more so just his girlfriend that didn't want him to do it. But as dumb guys do, he did it anyway. Once we all got in, I just enjoyed floating on the water and people watching when I noticed someone who stood out. It was a guy standing over by the cliffside that Isaiah jumped from. But the reason he stood out was because of his choice of clothing. While everyone else around us was in hiking garb, bathing suits, or even just shorts and a t-shirt, this guy was in black dress pants, a black suit jacket, and a black hat, like a fedora style. He had the hat on pretty low, however, so I couldn't see his face, yet I could feel his gaze. He was definitely staring in our direction. This time, I said out loud to everyone, "Are we being stared at?" This caused everyone to look in the same direction and notice the guy too. We all just waited in the water, having a staring contest and talking amongst ourselves as to why someone would possibly be here dressed like that. Not long after, Isaiah again shouted out to the guy, which caused some other people nearby to look around. I assume others noticed the oddity as they began staring, talking, and pointing, which then caused the guy to turn around and walk straight back behind the ledge until he was gone. We thought this was weird, but I, at least, didn't connect it to our previous night's experience at this point. I just thought it was someone being weird. We ended up leaving shortly after to go get stuff for dinner, as well as lighter fluid, to be prepared for our next fire. After dinner and freshening up, we tried to have a bonfire again. This time it went a lot better, and we had loosened up and we were having a blast. We were talking and teasing, The girls were even pushing their limits and making a fool of themselves. It was just genuinely a great time. That was until Leslie was again staring into the trees. That's when we all turned to look and saw the same guy. The form was the same, and with the giant flashlight Mike bought this time, we could shine the light right on him. He was wearing the same pants and suit jacket and hat. When the light hit him, he didn't really budge though. He leaned his head down some, probably to block out some of the light, but otherwise, he didn't do anything else. Isaiah again yelled at this guy, but it was a bit more threatening. I don't really blame him though. The girls were getting pretty nervous, and this guy had obviously been following or watching us. But this time, after a lot of shouting, I think most of us started feeling uncomfortable with the situation and all agreed to go inside. Once in, Madison actually called the cabin management office and told them someone was being creepy around our cabin, and they said that they would send someone out to take a look. The rest of the night wasn't as eventful, as the staring guy kind of made us sober up, but we did watch another movie until some of us started getting drowsy. Leslie and Isaiah went to their room. Madison went to bed before the second movie ended, and I followed after it was over, leaving Mike and Jess in the living room. Mike was already snoring, so I assumed they weren't going anywhere. I don't know the exact time, but I know it wasn't more than an hour or so after I went to bed that I woke up to a piercing scream. Madison had been startled awake too, and after confirming it wasn't her, I ran out of the room to find out what the hell had happened. I found Jess screaming in the living room. The front door was wide open and Mike was gone. She then explained that she woke up to a scratching sound, and when she looked at the window behind the couch they were on, she saw someone trying to open it, or at least standing at it. She then said Mike ran out of the door to catch the guy. Isaiah and I ran out after him, but found him shouting towards the trees. When we caught up to him, he said he had caught up to the guy, knocked his hat off, but the guy fought back with pepper spray or something to the likes. He said something hit his face, which made his eyes burn, and it was hard to breathe. We brought him back to the cabin, and this time, we called the cops and the office people. This time, Madison was not as nice. Police actually showed up pretty quickly and took our report, then looked around the cabins. They even went to a couple nearby and questioned those people too. They, of course, never found the guy or his hat. This guy most likely was brazen enough to go back and get it and still miss the cops. Jess took Mike to the hospital, and Madison agreed to go with her while the rest of us stayed behind. We never saw the guy again that night, but none of us went back to sleep either. After a few hours, the others came back and confirmed it was just some sort of pepper spray, so he was going to be all right, but the trip otherwise had been ruined. Jess, Leslie, and Mike were definitely not interested in staying the rest of the trip. No one could blame them either. After some talking, we ended up packing up all of our stuff that night, and the other four took off. Madison and I were pretty shaken up too, but we still had this booked for one more night, and she really wanted to give the front desk people a piece of her mind. I guess they didn't seem too concerned about the situation when she first called, and yeah, they probably should have been because it was their property that could have been damaged. So we put all of our belongings in the bedroom, locked the door, and tried our best to sleep there. The next morning was exhausting as we didn't sleep much. Management called us and apologized, and said they couldn't give a partial refund, but they did offer to move us to a different cabin. After informing our friends, they told us to enjoy, but they didn't want to go back. They did move us to one that had an indoor hot tub, so that was pretty cool. We also didn't have another run-in with a guy, but they also never found him. We still, to this day, have no idea why he targeted us or what his intentions even were if he were to break in. And the fact that he had pepper spray made me think he had intentions of using it, or at least needing it. We haven't been on a trip with the others since, but we all still hang out and remember that creepy spring break that got ruined for all of us. So that, my friends, was a collection of spring break stories. I don't know, actually. I think spring break just ended over here by us. So I know it's usually in March, but then Easter is not till April this year, which is really throwing things off for me. So, oh well, it's around the time. It's spring now, so close enough. Here we go. Here's spring break stories. Hope you enjoyed it. I don't have any scary stories that I can think of with spring break, except for the one with the lake house. Just kind of reminded me of with a friend of mine back whenever we were kids, because their parents actually had a place down in Lake of the Ozarks, so I got to go with them one time for spring break. And we did the same thing. They had a paddle boat that we took out. We thought we would be really cool, and we took snacks and like coloring books and stuff to go. And my biggest worry was that we were going to do something wrong and flip it over and lose all of our stuff, even though we had been on it before and I never had problems with it. But no, we didn't have any issues. We got a little further out in the water and started coloring. We had a little radio too with us that we were playing music on. And then it started raining. So no, we didn't flip the boat. We just got drenched from the rain. Started feeling a little bit and like, okay, we should probably turn back. And yeah, we got wet. It didn't downpour. Thankfully, we got back before that happened. But still, I was a little disappointed in that. So not exactly scary, but still a weird situation, I guess, for me. I don't know. Anyways, I hope you did enjoy this video, and please do give it a like below. If you did, let me know. That lets me know that you did enjoy it. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing. And also, don't forget to leave a comment on your thoughts. Let me know, did you have any strange spring break stories? Whether as an adult, a kid, scary, weird things that happened? Just let me know. If it's longer, feel free to send it to me, mariesfield.com. You can also submit it there. I'd be happy to feature it. And in the meantime, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week. And until next time, take care.